7 in all, and today I'm going to be walking you through a week in the life of using Gentle and Classical Primer and Gentle and Classical Nature, and just showing you how I implement that in my day-to-day life. This video has been a requested one, and I very much know that when you're first looking at a new curriculum, it can be really hard to try to get a picture of what this looks like in everyday life. And I also know, as homeschool moms, when we're combining different curriculums and our schedules and everything, we can feel a little bit like that guy in the meme where there's like this wall and he's showing how everything's connected and all of that. You know the meme I'm talking about, right? It can feel a little bit like that. So today I want to really walk you through Monday through Friday what this looks like, how it is doable for our family to do Gentle and Classical Primer and Gentle and Classical Nature. And this will be a talking video, but I'm going to intersperse some real life footage of our week onto it, so you'll get some action shots as well of what this looks like. So let's get started. Now, keep in mind, I am not saying that I am implementing this curriculum perfectly in exactly the way it was intended to be implemented. In fact, I know for sure that I am not. But I'm sharing you a glimpse of what this beautiful curriculum can look like implemented into a real life, real families homeschool. So in the week that I'm going over, we were doing Unit 15 from Gentle and Classical Primer, Unit 15, and then we were doing Unit 14, which you can probably see is about mosses and mushrooms. Those were the two units that we were implementing. Now, I'm not exactly on track with these as far as combining because we started Gentle and Classical Nature before we started Primer. You can do both of these together in 1 year. This is a 36 unit program, so you can do this with 1 week per unit and do it over 1 school year. And this is an 18 unit program, so you can spend 2 weeks on each unit and do it exactly over 1 school year and have everything match up perfectly. I don't really worry about that. It's not something that bothers me. And the two programs, they aren't interconnected in a way that, oh, it's messed up if you're on different units and you weren't spending, if you're not on the exact unit in each one, like exactly halfway through Primer when you're exactly halfway through Nature. You don't have to worry about that. So let's start with going through our week. Starting on beautiful Monday. You've had the restful weekend ready and excited to start your school day. We do our Primer reading at snack time every morning. So we do our Primer reading at snack time, and on Mondays I tend to do kind of more of the readings for the week. I could split it up a little more, but I found that it just really works better for us to do most of the readings on the first day of the week, and then we can kind of talk about all the different, it helps us with being able to talk about and review and go over those readings for future days of the week. So on Monday, I will read the Bible story. This week, it was about David the shepherd boy. So this is not the exact Bible they recommend. This is the Bible I have. I'm using what I have. I read the story of David the shepherd boy, and it showed Samuel anointing him with oil as he's chosen to be the next king. Then we read our story from Beatrix Potter, which wasn't actually in my Beatrix Potter treasury that I have because I don't have the same one. And I wasn't able to find it at the library, but I found a YouTube read aloud. So the story from Beatrix Potter was the story of the fierce bad rabbit. We listened to that story on YouTube. Then for our manners and hygiene statement, I have self-control at the table. We read a short poem from Everyday Graces. Pretty much every time you're reading from Everyday Graces, it's a very short, quick little poem or 1-page kind of piece of writing that ties into your manners, statement. And for our theology, we read a lesson from Theology, which is also very, very short, about 2 pages. So this amount of reading is definitely not a lot. It's not overwhelming. It's not a lot to do. A couple short readings and then your 1 story of the week and your Bible story. We can do all that at our Monday snack time very easily. So that was Monday. So I read all the core readings from Primer on the first day of the week. So what do I read for the rest of the week? Well, never fear, we still have Gentle and Classical Nature, that we have many readings that we can do, and we still have a lot that we can do, so I just wind things in as they fit. I don't typically reread so much as we go the main readings that I read on Monday, but I might open up the book and go through them. I'll show them the picture from the story and say, okay, what can you tell me about this Bible story? Can you tell me what happened? Who was this guy? Who was this guy? What was going on? Just a real quick review. We will, I don't incorporate the storyboard pieces from Primer. The author of the curriculum created beautiful storyboard pieces that can be used for the practice of narration, having your children act out and retell the main story of the week. So our main story was the fierce bad rabbit. And in different weeks, you have different stories. You might have Little Red Riding Hood or Peter Rabbit or all sorts of, you have a different story every single week. I think that narration and retelling the story is a very good idea. For me, the storyboard pieces seemed like a little bit too much work and too much cutting out and too much storage, and I was just like, I'm really practical, I'm really low-key, I'm not fancy, so we're gonna act out the stories. I love this practice, but I don't need necessarily fancy props to do it. So we love to retell the stories. So for the Fierce Bad Rabbit, I think it was on Wednesday, it was actually just at dinner time when my husband was home with us. I asked my son, hey, can you tell Papa the story of the Fierce Bad Rabbit? And he did. Just told Papa the whole story of this happened and then this happened and this happened. Other times we take baby dolls or we take baskets or we take a blanket and wrap up and we just act out the stories using ourselves as props or whatever props that we have. It's usually us that we are acting out as characters in the story. So I do practice that, and we do that typically by later in the week where you want to be acting out the story. But earlier in the week, maybe I'll just get out the book. I'll get out the Little Red Riding Hood book and we'll kind of just, I'll show an example of just a summary retelling in my own words, or I'll ask my son about the different pictures, what's happening here, what's happening here. So we'll go through it, but I won't necessarily read it again. If I really want to, or if they really want to, I will read it again. So that's kind of how we do our narration and retelling as we go throughout the week. We do review the stories. It's not just read it once on Monday and then we're done. We talk about it when we do the cards, and we talk about it during our morning story time, looking at the books. But we also do some new readings as we go through the week. And so with Gentle and Classical Nature, you have some read aloud scheduled. We are currently reading through Ellie's Log and Geraldine Wilkins. Both of these are a bit challenging for my sons. There's a lot of words, but they've been doing pretty well with them, with following the stories, but I do it in smaller bites. We can't read through a whole chapter of Ellie's Log in one sitting. But gradually as we go through the week, we'll read our nature readings. On Tuesday, I read a 2-page spread from this book, Slow Down, which I love this book. They have pretty much pages for just about every theme that you would have in nature. So I read a 2-page spread about how a mushroom grows. We read that, and I did have a library book on mushrooms as well. So we read that one of the days this week. So just kind of like sprinkling in readings as you go through the week. Also during our snack time, I'll pull in a page or two from the nature notebook, the student notebook from Gentle and Classical Nature. So for example, I pulled in this page and we read it, and then we're talking about which animals find shelter under moss and mushrooms. And my sons love this because it's pretty silly to think about a dog or a fish finding shelter under moss or a mushroom. So I'll bring in a couple pages. Now keep in mind the moss and mushroom, this unit is supposed to take 2 weeks. So I'm not worried about doing every page in the Gentle and Classical Nature, even every page that I want to do, because I probably won't do every single page, but I don't have to do all those pages within this week. We're spending 2 weeks on this topic. We also read this one. We talked about characteristics of moss, characteristics of mushrooms, but we haven't done this page. We'll do this one next week. Go over reading this poem. We're not doing it daily, but I do read it to them throughout the term, and tracing the words, which I didn't think my son would like to trace it, but he's been really into tracing letters recently, so hey. So we'll do something like that during our story time, just sprinkling in little bits of nature study during that snack time. And also as the week progresses, I'll continue to talk about art. We'll bring up Monet's painting, and I also read a few pages from this Linnea in Monet's Garden. We are slowly going through this as we're studying Monet over this whole term. In this week, I read these pages because it shows an example of 4 different paintings that Monet painted of this scene, of this lily pond scene with the bridge. So showing that he's painted it in different ways. The art activity for this week, the art theme is talking about lightness and darkness of colors. And when I read the guide, I found out that the art activity was supposed to be something about making shadows in art, like drawing a house and then making a shadow for it. And it was based on a picture book. Now, I didn't have the picture book that art activity was based on, but I could take, okay, what's the topic they're supposed to be learning here, was shadows. So I just went back over paintings that we've already studied in primer and said, hey, can you find the shadows in this painting? And we went through several paintings and identified shadows. So that's kind of my example of just a real life application, seeing what is it we're supposed to be learning here and then applying it in a way that works practically for us. Also, my son wanted to paint and he wanted to paint mushrooms. So these are his mushrooms. He was very distinctive on drawing all the gills for the mushrooms. So sometimes also the kids will come up with their own extension activities. Now, so the 2 main times a day we work on Gentle and Classical Primer in Nature are snack time in the morning. Well, they have a bowl of snack in front of them, and then in the afternoon when we work on our cards. But especially with nature, we do try to keep that in mind throughout our everyday life. And with mosses and mushrooms, that was a really great topic that we could seek and try to find in our everyday life. So on, I think Wednesday of the week, we went out on a drive actually and tried to look through our windows and find a place where we could find mushrooms. And we found a rotting stump and a bunch of mushrooms growing on it. And later in the week, the boys were just playing outside, and then my son calls me, Mama, you gotta come see this. And I came outside and he'd found moss growing on the bricks in our little yard area. And I didn't even know that there was moss there. And he didn't know there was moss until once he's learned about it, it's triggering the ability to recognize it and know, oh, this is what this is moss. And he was so excited to have found it. So we did identify mushrooms and moss in nature. Also, I had my husband pick up some mushrooms from the grocery store, just a selection of mushrooms. And so we did a little exploration with mushrooms, touching them, cutting them into pieces, looking at the gills. So it was a really fun way to get hands-on with mushrooms. Now, because I do all of the primer readings on Monday of our first day of the week, I don't typically do any readings for nature on that day. The next element, and one of my favorite elements of Gentle and Classical Preschool, primer, Gentle and Classical Press, all the Gentle and Classical things, is the memory statement cards. And we go over these every single day of the week, Monday through Friday. And you will notice that I don't have mine on a very pretty wall. I don't have a wall. I have always kept them loose. I find that for us, it's very helpful to have them movable, we can do kinesthetic activities with them. We can hide them around the house and go and find them. We can put them on the floor and slap them with a broom or whatever we're using to play like a slapping game as we're identifying them. We can do lots of activities. We can also just sit down and go through them and talk about them. And we do that pretty often. So that's what we do. We'll go through and we'll say them and we'll use them as some kind of talking point. I'll always bring up some talking point. So the story of the fierce bad rabbit, what did the bad rabbit steal from the good rabbit? Just little simple quick questions. It's a very maybe 5 to 8 minutes of our day as we go through these. But really, I'm finding by the time you get done with learning a card, my son really knows it and is really able to talk about it. I have found these to be extremely effective. I haven't so much implemented the Robert Louis Stevenson poems as we've done this. I feel like for the age of my children, who are a little bit young, they're a little bit high up. I have played the songs that she recommends. I put those in our Spotify playlist every week. I enjoy listening to them, but I think that they are something that my children would appreciate maybe in a few years. Then we have our Bible verse, and do keep in mind, this will be obvious when you're using Gentle and Classical Primer, but a lot of the things that you're memorizing, you don't have only 1 week to memorize it. This Bible verse sticks with you for a while, so don't worry about it. they'll be able to memorize it within the amount of time you're given. It's pretty easy. So we say our Bible verse, we talk about it a little bit. I like to ask for this verse, he will take great delight in you. Who is he? Who is the he in that verse? We remember what Bible story did we read? We read David the shepherd's boy. And for this one, I'm just not going to go over these. I'm going to ask a question. That's always going to ask a question, bring out a talking point. So they did something strange, right, to David. They poured oil on his head. What is that called? What did that mean? So we go over that. I have self-control at the table. We'll talk about examples of having self-control and examples of not having self-control. My son always loves to talk about, like the bad example of not doing the right thing. That's super fun. We say our catechism question. We sing the I have self-control song and talk again about how can self-control help us with making the right choice. I will read them the nursery rhyme. Peter, Peter, pumpkin eater. I read it very animated, sing-song, silly way, usually make some commentary on it. Have you ever seen a person that could fit inside a pumpkin? And by the end of the week, they're usually saying it right along with me. Those are fun. We'll talk very briefly about the math statement. We have plenty of math that we do, so this isn't necessarily a huge priority to me. And on this first day of the week, on Monday, I'll show them. I'll say we're looking at art by the artist Monet. This is the water lily pond. But I won't spend as much time on art on the first day, just because we did a lot of our readings on Monday. We'll do more art later in the week. But I do show them the painting, bring up the name, maybe point out something in it, and talk about value being the lightness or darkness of a color. Then we have our science cards. And again, on the first day of the week, on this particular week, I didn't read anything from science, but I just introduced the memory statement card and said, okay, we're going to be talking about these two things this week, moss and mushrooms. Introduce the statement, introduce our vocabulary cards here, and that's what we do for the cards. The other thing that we do every day throughout the week is the hymn. So during this term, we're learning, May the Grace of Christ our Savior. That's the hymn. And we do this first thing in the morning when they're eating their breakfast. I'll play the hymn for them on my phone. That's been working really well for us. And then at bedtime, since they were born, I've always sung hymns to them at bedtime, usually a few. Now I'm just changing out another hymn I might like to sing, because I often sing the same ones. I'll change it out and I'll do this one. I'll sing this to them every day at bedtime. So these different parts might come more naturally into different parts of your day. I typically do, like I said, I do the story time part at our snack time in the morning. And then I do the card review with my older son after his little brother goes down for a nap. Just a quiet time. It's part of our routine. He knows how to expect it, so it goes really well. The nature program also encourages you to develop a system of going out and visiting a specific walk or view every week or every unit, going out and visiting it and becoming very familiar with one specific place. I will say we don't do this. We live on an island, so we have kind of a limited number of nature places we can go. We do go to all the same places pretty regularly, but that's just that is part of our routine. I don't necessarily try to specifically go to one place and work on having my kids narrate and describe everything they see. I am a lifelong homeschooler, so I'm kind of always in teacher mommy mode. So definitely anywhere we go, I see it as a learning opportunity. I'm talking about what we're seeing. I'm encouraging them to show me what they see and show me what they find. And I feel really content with that. I feel like they're really good for where they are at. My son is 4.5, so he's not necessarily at the stage of maybe a 6 or 7-year-old who could be describing a particular place that they've been in really great detail. But I think that, if your kids are older, you might want to try specifically to follow that, or you just might want to be encouraged to get outside into nature with your kids and be intentional about observing what you see and seeing what you can learn from that. So on this particular week, we actually did do a really fun nature outing, which ended up having nothing to do with moss or mushrooms. We didn't see any moss or mushrooms, but we did see a herd of 20 water buffalo bathing in water. We did see pitcher plants. We did see a snake skin. Oh, where's the snake skin? we did see a snake skin. My husband grabbed a piece of it, but it was like from a probably 8-foot long snake, and that's probably an underestimation. My husband thought it was even longer. It was the biggest snake skin I have seen in my life. We saw a huge monitor lizard. So don't always be worried about like trying to make your nature walk and nature experiences match the theme of what you're learning about, because it might not match. We don't live actually in a temperate climate, so quite a bit of what we have learned about in nature, it's not actually our local nature. I still think it's super valuable to learn about, but our nature walks don't necessarily match up with what we're learning about, and that's fine. You don't really have to stress about everything matching all the time. If you have any other questions about how I implement this in my days, please definitely feel free to leave this down below. I'm trying to answer as many as I can think of, but I probably did miss something. Now, as to how I plan and prep for the week, I just sit down on Friday. So once I get through with my week and I do record what we do in my handy little planner, ding, ding, ding. Once we get done for the week, I will take my little stack of cards, the cards that we've been learning this week, and then I will get my box, my beautiful cardboard box where I have stored all of the other cards, and I'll just slide them out of here the next week, slide the next one out. I have them organized by topic, so I have a little bag with each topic, and within the bag they are organized from Unit 1 to Unit 36. So I'll slide them out of the bag, slide the old one back in the bag in order, and then I'll just create my new stack of cards for the next unit. Now, some of them aren't changing because we'll stay on moss and mushrooms for another week. So that's the first part of my planning. I'll just quick change out my cards. I will look at my teacher's guides. So for nature is kind of where in some ways you can get a little bit more creative with the nature implements. Like, so we had those ideas like, let's buy some mushrooms from the grocery store and chop them into pieces. But I'll look at my themes and I'll think of any extra activities I might want to do, or I'll just kind of roughly scatter out the readings. But I already have that rhythm in place of, we typically do the primer readings at the beginning of the week, and we start slotting in the nature readings and extra readings about moss or mushrooms later on in the week, just as we go through. And how do I decide how much to read to my kids in one snack time? Basically, it's how long snack time lasts. How long are they sitting there super engaged, asking questions, eating their food? So maybe it's half an hour, maybe it's a little longer, maybe it's a little less. It depends on the day, but so that's why I don't write it down ahead of time. I don't write it down ahead of time in my journal. I'll have like a piece of scrap paper that I'll write down my kind of rough plan, what I'm thinking, if I have any special game or any special idea of, oh, this is a cool Bible story. I know I have a fun coloring page for this. Maybe we'll do a coloring page for the Bible story, because my son's been getting extra into coloring lately. I do have like a kind of rough plan. I'll roughly plan it out on a piece of scratch paper. I'll have my cards all ready. I'll make sure I have the books, or sometimes in the case of the Fierce Bad Rabbit, I'll try to find it on YouTube because I don't have the book. And then I'm ready to go for Monday. So it might be a little intimidating at first, but I hope that watching this video helps you to see how it all comes together, get to see a little bit of this in action. And yeah, if you find this video helpful, please do subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. I'd love to have nerdy homeschool conversations with you and encourage you in your joyful homeschool life. I'll be seeing you next time. Bye!